Hi everyone, I'm Mary Ellen with Headwaters Science Institute and welcome to our live Arbor Day event here at the Villager Nursery in Truckee. We are excited to talk to Eric, longtime owner-operator of the Villager, and glean some words of wisdom from him about planting and species we can plant and all things plants. So, the Villager also specializes in harvesting seeds from cold hardy plants and propagating and producing native species. So before we get to Eric, I want to remind everybody about a live event next week on May 6th, our trivia contest and cocktails for a cause. This event helps fundraise for these free science programs, and also in particular, it helps fund student science programs in the Sacramento area.
Summer is upon us. It's time to embrace all those beautiful smoky smells, just like you're sitting around a campfire. Friends, I'm Michelle Stolgren. This is Garden of Glass Mixology. Welcome to your virtual bar. I'm going to share with you one of my favorite ways to infuse smoke into your beverage. I call it my campfire cocktails or mocktails. Okay, everyone, here's what you need. Couldn't be simpler. A light, a clean glass, a square of toilet paper. I like to throw in a little dried herb. This is some thyme, and then you need a surface you can burn on. Kids, make sure you try this under strict adult supervision. Okay, here's how it works. Take your square of toilet paper, fold it into a tiny piece, and then light it on fire. We're gonna wait till this is 3/4 of the way burnt, and as soon as it gets big and smoky, oh, look at all those beautiful smoke colors. I'm gonna put my glass right on top. Notice the flame goes out and you're capturing all those beautiful smoky aromas. Here's the second part, friends, is you need to have a beverage ready. This is a jalapeno sparkling lemonade. And if you want to learn this recipe, make sure you join us on May 6th for the big day of giving with the Headwaters Science Institute. The last part of this cocktail, friends, is to remove your glass. See all that smoke? Pour in your drink. Woo! And just like that, I have a smoky, bubbly jalapeno lemonade. Can't wait to share this with you. Hope to see you all May 6th. Cheers.
All right, that'll be fun next week on the 6th. But for now, I would like to introduce Eric. He's owned and operated the Villager Nursery for over 35 years here in Truckee. He has devoted his career to learning as much as he can about the plants in the area. He's participated in endless planting projects and given back continually to the community. So we're going to pick his brain and find out what we can do this week and this coming summer. So let's start with natives. What is a native and why would you want to plant a native?
Can I cheat?
You can totally cheat.
The California Native Plant Society has on their website, they have a statement that it says, conserving California native plants, their goal, their mission is to conserve California native plants and their natural habitats, and increase understanding and appreciation and horticultural uses of native plants through education, plant science, advocacy, land stewardship, and native plant gardening. Basically, it's taking care of the wildlands and doing everything you can to make them healthier and better. I've always had a goal growing up and going to school that I thought that perhaps I would do whatever I could to leave the planet better than it was when I found it. I don't know that that's possible really, but I can do we do what we can to make it better. As far as natives are part of our ecosystem, each individual ecosystem. They feed the wildlife. They're associated with the soil microorganisms that are in our soil. They all work together with each other to create a sense of place.
Do you have a favorite or a native tree or shrub here that's super successful or a favorite?
That would depend on the day, really. But there are certain, the plants that I really like are I like when I'm hiking or when you're. I mean that we tell our staff and we tell customers when you're gardening in the Sierras, it's a little bit of a challenging ecosystem. We say observe while you're hiking. Look at the north side of a cliff and say, look at what plants are growing there, because on the north side of your house, that's what might do well there, or on the sunny south slope. There.
Break there, but back to the Bleeding Hearts.
So Bleeding Heart is actually it's native to the west side of the Sierras.
So this might be somebody in a lower elevation, warmer climate like Sacramento.
Like Sacramento, in the shade, for sure.
Yeah.
But it's a gorgeous, tall ground cover that blooms for a long time every spring.
And it looks like a little heart.
Yeah, it has this little pink bleeding heart. It's a lovely plant. It's actually blooming in my yard right now.
Oh, wow.
Columbine, Western red columbine. A lot of columbine tend to be fairly short-lived. Everybody knows what columbine is. I mean, state flower of Colorado, but a lot of them live for 2 or 3 years. And the Western red columbine gets 3 to 4 feet high and lives for decades.
Really?
Hummingbirds love it. It grows in full sun.
Okay, we're back. The Wi-Fi is back.
There's always next time. There's always next year. That's the gardener's motto.
Okay, what's this pretty yellow one you got?
This is a native. This one is Violet glabella. This is a little woodland violet that grows virtually anywhere as long as it's shady. Violets are all edible.
And that's a wet, moist.
Kind of wet, moist. It actually tolerates a little bit of dry.
Oh, nice.
But it spreads all over from seed. It's darn near a weed, but it's.
What's this pretty red one back there?
So Antonaria or pussy toes.
Oh, one of my favorites.
Yeah, so there are actually many species of it. This is not our native species. Antonaria rosea is native, and this one is not, but it looks just like it. It's sort of the native vernacular. Very drought tolerant. Anything with silvery leaves is pretty much a dead giveaway for drought and sun tolerance.
Oh, okay. Good to know. So let's transition to trees. We have a lot. I mean, some people come up here and think all the trees are the same, but they're not. We have many different native species. Point out something you've got here.
This is Western white pine.
Yeah.
And this is actually from local seed source. We actually get white pine from Cascade Seed Source, and it's miraculously different. It's like wide open. White pines are unbelievably flexible. There's one planted down in the Pocket Park it is in a place where the town stores snow, 20 feet of ice and rock, and crushes the thing, bends it flat, and it springs back up. So native to high elevation. A really close relative is, believe it or not, this is a sugar pine. The Sugar Pine Foundation just dropped off several hundred sugar pines for us for Arbor Day to give away. So if anybody wants one.
If you're wanting a sugar pine in your yard, come and visit Eric soon. What's this?
This is
evergreen here.
This is Jeffrey pine, and Jeffreys have this sort of blue-gray foliage to them. They look very similar to ponderosa pines, although the ponderosa is usually more green. Generally, north of Lake Tahoe, you get Jeffreys and ponderosas mix. South of Lake Tahoe, ponderosas on the west slope, Jeffreys on the east side. Or that gray is it's that gray. It's an adaptation to drought and winter sun,
which we're certainly experiencing right now.
Yes.
And this little guy that's about to leaf out.
This brings up what is native. You can broadly we are actually at the edge of the Great Basin. We are in the Great Basin. The Sierras are to our west. Mount Rose is to our east. That is one of the ridges in the Basin Range. The range is in the Basin Range. So the Martis Valley is actually a basin in the Basin Range. So we always sort of joke that we are on the, Salt Lake City or Park City is on the other shore. We're on the west shore. Park City is over on the east shore of the Great Basin, and it's a large eco region. This is native to us. This is vine maple, which is related to Japanese maples. It's a group of maples that go around the North Pacific, and this occurs not 50 miles north of us, you start to see it, but it does not technically occur here. But you can find the right ecosystem at your house where it doesn't really like our winter sun. It's a little too dry.
Would this be native in the Sacramento area?
Not really, but it works there.
Yeah.
As long as you put it in part shade.
Yeah, and they're beautiful in the fall.
Oh, they're gorgeous. They've got these big, broad leaves, incredible fall colors. Yeah. And it's got this nice structured shape like the Japanese maples.
Oh, that's a good one.
You know this one?
Yeah.
This is Camas lily. Camas lilies. There's Sage Hen Creek is a local wildflower hike that everybody around here knows, but and one of them does not do it justice. When you look out and there's a square mile of these all in bloom and it looks like a lake, then it's quite impressive.
They're stunning.
Yeah, it's a stunning little native lily.
I see something here that's not a native, but it has a really interesting story. Tell us about it. It's a apricot tree sapling, and apricots are not native here, but this thing is cool. So tell us about it.
This came from foraging for food on national land, where you're not allowed to collect, but you're allowed to forage. So there's the Lehman Caves and Lehman Ranch is at the border of Utah and
The other side of the
Nevada,
Great Basin.
on the far right out in the middle of the Great Basin. And there's these trees that were planted in the 1800s that are there, these apricot trees. And if you're there in the fall, they are loaded. They're huge old trees, and they are loaded with apricots. You're allowed to eat them. You're not allowed to pick up the seed, but if you collect the seed from what you eat, then you can grow your own apricots.
What was the origination of that tree? It says here that it was miners or something.
It was, yeah, that was the Lehman. It was his ranch. It's a huge ranch.
Oh, okay.
So, and he's the one that discovered the caves. Have you ever seen those?
Yeah,
So,
they're
yeah.
really
And
cool.
honestly, Truckee has such a hard time with late frosts and things budding out that it's unlikely to ever actually fruit here, but it does have really pretty pink flowers.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of
It's a cool
entertaining.
novelty.
Yeah, it's a novelty, extremely drought tolerant plant.
Okay, so I have a project. I want to plant a native tree and a native shrub in Truckee. What two plants should I plant?
Because I know where you're thinking of putting them.
They're by a creek.
Yeah, so the elderberry and aspen. There's an aspen.
Tell us about aspens.
So
And they're native.
Aspen is native. Aspen are, according to the aspen ecologists, aspen haven't grown from seed in the Sierras for over 10,000 years. There have been climatic conditions for the seed. When the seed actually comes out, it's not warm enough, and so they don't actually germinate. So all the groves that you see that are native around the Sierras are from clones that have been growing for over 10,000 years.
10,000 years.
10,000 years. Yeah.
Wow.
And aspen are dying out throughout the Sierras because of fire suppression. They hate shade. So as the conifers come up and grow, it shades them out and they get diseases and they succumb. Whereas in fire ecosystems, where there is fire, it burns all around them, it leaves the space open, and then they have the advantage. In the 1988 Yellowstone fires, they called aspen the asbestos trees
Wow.
because the fires would be raging through there was over 500,000 acres burned in those fires, and the fires would just be raging through the lodgepole forests. It hit the aspen groves and stopped.
That's a good thing to know in our drought years
Yes.
these days.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to plant an aspen. What about a shrub?
Elderberry.
Oh, an elderberry. I love elderberries.
Elderberries are good in a place where you have heavy snow storage, not because they bend, but because when they break or die in the winter, you can chop them off and they grow all the way back to a full-size plant, flower, and fruit the next year.
Wow, like a perennial flower.
Almost, yeah. So some years, if it's a mild winter, they bud out from all the way up on the stem. Other years where it's very harsh or very dry, they might actually die down. But you use these in commercial settings where you had to have a landscape, but you also had to have snow storage, and you would put those in that location. You could bury them in snow, destroy them, chop them off in the spring, and then they grow back to a giant shrub. They have clusters of white flowers in the spring, and then these giant panicles of delicious fruit in the fall. I grew up on the west slope of the Sierras, and I walked about a mile through the woods to my middle school, and there was an elderberry that in the fall, it was like every morning I would just pull down a branch and just hug that. Like,
and they're medicinally awesome berries too. They're really good. Oh yeah, they're really good for your immune system. Sun or shade?
Mostly sun.
Okay.
Elderberries are funny. They're also you see them often in very sunny locations, in places that appear to be really harsh and dry. But if there's an elderberry, you can be positive that there is moisture in the soil, because they actually do. They consume a fair amount of water.
Similar to aspens.
Similar to aspens, yes. There's some on the Truckee River down the canyon where they're like growing out of rocks, and so it looks like they're in a dry location, but there's water underneath there for sure.
Cool.
These are called, when aspens spread, there's people call them suckers often, but they're actually called ramets.
Oh, good to know.
Ramets are individuals on a clonal organism.
So this will be a tree.
These will grow as trees, yeah. This was actually planted as 3 separate, but if you plant one, you will soon have ramets coming up all over the place.
Yay.
They're kind of a weed.
Wow, and they're very bendable. Yeah. Well, maybe we can show you how to plant those. Planting trees is one of the most satisfying and helpful things you can do for climate change. Trees are amazing. They pull carbon out of the air and make wood out of it. They filter the air, they filter the water. They provide 80% of the habitat for terrestrial diversity, and they also are the source of 25% of our medicines. So planting trees is awesome, and we're going to show you how easy it is. So we picked out these 2 native species. This one is an aspen, a Populus tremuloides, and this one is an elderberry, which is Sambucus nigra. Both of them are native to our area in the Sierra, but they have a really wide range, and so you can plant these in most parts of California. Because of our heavy snowpack, our soil is really compacted and it's very silty. Our decomposition period or season is really short, so we don't get a lot of nutrient recharge in the soil. So I'm going to mix, after I dig my holes, I'm going to mix in this compost. You can use your own compost, but it's very helpful for the plants to get some sort of amendment in there. The hole I'm going to dig is going to be 2 to 3 times wider than my pot. It doesn't have to be any deeper, but it needs to be very wide so the roots can spread out. Here we go, digging. So this is going to be a perfect spot for my little aspen. It's right near a creek and they love water. I'm going to place it in my spot and then draw out a circle that's 2 to 3 times the size of the pot and start digging. Now that I got my hole dug as big as I want it, I'm going to add my amendment to loosen up the dirt. I'm trying to mix the compost in with the native soil and make it nice and light. I'm also going to use this compost to mulch it, and I'll explain why later. Then I'm going to take my tree and remove it from the pot and look at the root ball. If the roots are all circular and entwined, you want to pull them apart so that they don't grow in a circle and they reach out into the surrounding dirt. Another handy hint is if you have branches that are already branched out, orient it so the branches are facing southwest, which is that way. to shade the trunk when it gets bigger. Our sun is pretty intense up here, and any kind of shading or protection you can give the trunk, the better. So now I have it in the ground, a little bit above the surface, and I'm just going to backfill it with mulch and dirt. This is the fun part. Mulch and dirt. Until it gets all backfilled in. This tree is going to love this spot by the water. So once I've got my tree in the ground, I need to mulch it. I'm going to use the same stuff to mulch it. Mulching is really important up here and anywhere because it shades the shallow roots from intense heat, and it retains moisture, and it actually helps the soil microorganisms to stay healthy and not burned out by the sun. So mulching is good. Do lots of it. And ideally you want to go out to the edge of the drip line of the branches. So I'm going to extend it way wide. Now that I've got the mulch on, you want to make sure you water it at least once a week, and you want to water the amount of your container. So if you water it twice a week, split your container volume up and give it some water. My elderberry in the ground along with my aspen. I'm excited about riding by here every day and seeing how these things are going to grow this summer. Arbor Day is a great way to give back to your community. See if you can find a place where you can plant a tree. Happy Arbor Day. All right, now that you know how to plant a tree, we actually are going to pick Eric's brain a little more for something that the lower elevations could plant, where it's warmer and doesn't have such a long winter. So what do you think our friends in Sacramento?
So if I lived in a warmer climate,
If you did.
there's so many things I would want to plant, but some of my favorites are, well, two of my favorites are Pacific dogwood
Oh, yeah.
with the huge white flowers. That is such, it's one of the most spectacular. I grew up at that elevation, and it's such a beautiful
And
tree.
driving down Highway 20, you can see them all blooming.
There, yeah. And it always snows on the dogwood, which apparently it did last week or earlier this week. And then lower down in the heat, the western redbud.
Oh.
When that blooms in the spring, it's this magenta shrub. It's a small shrub. It's very drought tolerant. It probably, if it has any detractions, it can't take too much water. But it's easy to grow. Most nurseries carry it, and it's just in the spring when it blooms, it's unbelievable. It's just a solid mass of magenta color.
And a native tree would be
Well,
oak tree?
yeah, I mean the oaks are so spectacular down there.
Yeah.
Valley oaks, the Oregon white oak. We constantly are pushing it and trying them here, and we kill lots of them, unfortunately.
Is it the long winter?
It's long winter, it's too wet, it's too dry, it's too sunny, it's too much temperature extreme. It's all dramatic. In Sacramento, the heat is one of the toughest aspects of growing there, the summer heat. So,
Any last
giant
words of wisdom?
Well, the other native tree that's spectacular, not for small gardens, but 23 miles from here, just over the summit, just past Royal Gorge, on the Forest Hill Divide, is the northernmost grove of giant sequoia, Sequoia gigantea. And that
Can you see them from 80?
you cannot see them from 80. You have to come up from Forest Hill or go down through the cedars and go over that way. But they grow very well here, really well over at the basin and in Sacramento. So there's some enormous old ones down there. Yeah.
All right. Well, there you have it. Some great ideas for us here up at 6,000 feet, or if you're down in the valley. Hopefully you can take some ideas and get a tree or plant planted for Arbor Day.
Happy Arbor Day.
Yes, happy Arbor Day. And please join us next week on May 6th. If you are not around, you can donate now through Network of Good for our science programs in the Bay or in the Sacramento. And if you can, join us for our trivia night and cocktails for a cause. We've got a great prize awarded to the best trivia expert. And happy Arbor Day.